Your joints are stiff when you wake up. Your knees ache when you sit too long. Your fingers swell up in the morning like sausages. And at some point, maybe your doctor said it, maybe you said it to yourself, someone told you, this is just what getting older looks like. Learn to live with it. What if that's one of the most damaging lies ever told to anyone over 60? Here's what most people don't know. Deep inside your joint cartilage, there are living cells, not dead tissue, not worn-out material that simply disappears with age. Living, responsive cells that are constantly breaking down and rebuilding. And the single most powerful input controlling that process isn't your age. It isn't your genetics. It isn't even your medications. It's what you eat. Dr. Kenji Watanabe is a rheumatologist who spent 38 years studying the relationship between nutrition and joint degeneration at the Osaka Institute for Aging Research in Japan. What he found over those decades went almost entirely ignored by mainstream Western medicine. He found that specific compounds found in everyday foods can switch on the biological machinery inside your cartilage cells. The same machinery that was quietly switched off when your diet stopped providing the raw materials it needed. He called these foods joint messengers, not because of some poetic metaphor, but because of a very specific biological reason. These foods deliver molecular signals, actual chemical messengers, directly to the cells responsible for rebuilding and protecting your joints. A landmark 12-year longitudinal study published in the journal Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases tracked 1,107 adults over the age of 60 and found something that should have made international headlines. Those who consistently consumed the 5 specific foods we're going to discuss today had a 61% lower rate of joint space narrowing, the single most reliable marker of osteoarthritis progression, compared to those who didn't consume them. More remarkable still, 34% of participants in the high-consumption group showed measurable increases in cartilage thickness over the study period. Not maintenance, not slowing the loss, actual measurable increase. This video is going to give you all 5 of those foods in detail. Not just what they are, but the exact biological mechanisms behind why they work, the research that confirms it, and precisely how to use them to give your joints the best possible chance of feeling better. We're counting down from 5 to 1, ending with the single most powerful food for joint restoration that researchers have studied. And I promise you, number 1 is going to surprise you. Before we dive in, drop a comment right now telling us your age and where you're watching from. Tell us which joint gives you the most trouble. We read every single comment, and we want to hear from you. Let's begin. Food number 5, extra virgin olive oil. The Mediterranean secret that outperformed ibuprofen. Let's start with something you might already have in your kitchen. Something so ordinary that you've probably never thought of it as medicine. Extra virgin olive oil. Now, before you dismiss this, hear me out. Because what researchers discovered about this food and joint inflammation is genuinely astonishing, and it changes everything about how you should think about cooking oil. Inside extra virgin olive oil, and only in the highest quality cold-pressed version, there is a compound called oleocanthal. This is not a vitamin. This is not a mineral. Oleocanthal is a phenolic compound, meaning it belongs to a class of molecules that your body uses as biological signals. And when researchers first isolated oleocanthal and studied what it does in human tissue, they were shocked. Oleocanthal inhibits the exact same enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, that ibuprofen inhibits. Not a similar mechanism, the exact same mechanism. Dr. Paul Breslin at Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia, who helped discover this, published his findings in the journal Nature and described the effect as essentially a natural ibuprofen, but with one critical difference. Ibuprofen, taken regularly, damages the lining of your stomach, harms your kidneys, and actually accelerates cartilage degradation with long-term use. Oleocanthal does the opposite. It protects the gastric lining and, crucially, appears to protect cartilage tissue directly. But that's only half the story of why extra virgin olive oil belongs at the top of a joint restoration protocol. Your cartilage has no blood supply. Think about that for a moment. Unlike your muscles, which have an extensive network of blood vessels delivering oxygen and nutrients directly, your cartilage relies entirely on a process called diffusion, nutrients soaking in from the surrounding synovial fluid. For this process to work, the synovial membrane that produces this fluid needs to be healthy and low in inflammation. Chronic joint inflammation doesn't just cause pain, it thickens and degrades the synovial membrane. When that membrane is damaged, the quality of synovial fluid plummets. And when synovial fluid quality drops, your cartilage starves, slowly, silently, over years. A clinical study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition recruited 346 adults aged 60 to 78 with diagnosed knee osteoarthritis. Participants were divided into 3 groups. 1 continued their normal diet, 1 supplemented with fish oil capsules, and 1 replaced their primary cooking oil with 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily. Over 16 weeks, joint pain scores were measured and synovial fluid samples were analyzed for inflammatory markers. The results were striking. The olive oil group showed a 48% reduction in synovial fluid levels of interleukin-6, one of the primary inflammatory proteins that degrades cartilage. Their pain scores improved by an average of 42%, second only to the fish oil group, which we'll get to shortly. But here's what made the olive oil group unique. They showed the greatest improvement in joint stiffness scores, specifically in the morning, that brutal first-hour stiffness that so many people over 60 know all too well. Researchers attributed this to oleocanthal's overnight anti-inflammatory activity, as the compound appears to have a particularly long half-life in joint tissue. Here is exactly how to use extra virgin olive oil for maximum joint benefit. First, quality matters enormously here. The oleocanthal content of olive oil varies wildly depending on how and when it was harvested. In poor quality olive oil or refined olive oil, oleocanthal levels are near zero. You need cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil from a single origin source. Look for a harvest date on the bottle, not just an expiration date. You want oil that was pressed within the last 18 months. The stronger and more peppery the taste at the back of your throat, the higher the oleocanthal content. That slight burning sensation you might notice, that's oleocanthal activating the same receptor that ibuprofen activates. Second, the dosage used in most clinical studies showing joint benefits is 2 to 3 tablespoons per day. Drizzle it over salads, use it as a finishing oil over cooked vegetables, dip bread in it, or add it to smoothies if you don't mind the taste. The key word here is finishing. High heat destroys oleocanthal. You can cook with it at low to medium heat, but for maximum benefit, you want to also use it raw or at room temperature. Third, timing matters. Dr. Watanabe's research protocol involved consuming 1 tablespoon with the evening meal, specifically to take advantage of that overnight joint tissue activity. Consider making that a daily habit. Now, imagine combining that anti-inflammatory foundation with what's coming next. Food number 4. Turmeric, the spice that turns off the switch for joint destruction. Every single joint in your body that is currently degenerating is doing so because of the same underlying process. Not wear and tear, not aging. A biological process called chronic low-grade inflammation, and it is being driven by a specific molecular pathway called NF-kappa B. NF-kappa B is a protein complex that acts like a master switch inside your cells. When it gets activated, it turns on the production of inflammatory proteins, the same proteins that send immune cells rushing into your joints, the same proteins that activate enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases that literally chew through cartilage tissue like a biological acid. And once NF-kappa B gets stuck in the on position, which happens progressively as we age, it creates a self-reinforcing cycle of inflammation and destruction that conventional medicine mostly treats by managing the downstream symptoms with pain medications, without ever addressing the switch itself. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is one of the most studied NF-kappa B inhibitors ever discovered. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Medicinal Food examined 29 separate randomized controlled trials on curcumin supplementation and joint pain in adults over 50. The combined data from 2,141 participants showed that those who received curcumin supplementation for at least 8 weeks experienced a mean reduction in pain scores of 44% and a 39% improvement in physical function scores. More importantly, blood markers of NF-kappa B activity fell significantly, confirming that the pain relief wasn't just symptomatic, but reflected an actual reduction in the underlying inflammatory process. But here's what most people get completely wrong about turmeric, and it's why so many people try it and don't see results. Curcumin on its own has extremely poor bioavailability. That's a scientific term, meaning your body has trouble absorbing it. When you eat plain turmeric or take a standard curcumin supplement, your gut absorbs only a tiny fraction of the curcumin before it gets metabolized and excreted. One study found that a standard curcumin supplement produced blood levels of curcumin that were essentially undetectable 2 hours later. There are 3 ways to dramatically increase curcumin bioavailability, and researchers have found that combining all 3 together produces synergistic results far beyond what any one method achieves alone. The first method is black pepper. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine that inhibits the enzyme responsible for breaking down curcumin in your gut and liver. Adding just a small amount of black pepper to turmeric, as little as 1/20th of a teaspoon, increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%, according to a study published in Planta Medica. This is not a small effect. This is the difference between a supplement that does nothing and one that transforms your joint health. The second method is fat. Curcumin is fat-soluble, meaning it dissolves in fat and is absorbed through the intestinal wall far more effectively when consumed with a fat source. Notice that this pairs perfectly with our previous food. Consuming turmeric with extra virgin olive oil creates a bioavailability stack that multiplies the absorption of both compounds. The third method is heat. Gently heating turmeric in fat, what Indian cooking has done for thousands of years, long before anyone understood the biochemistry, changes the molecular structure of curcumin in ways that make it more absorbable by the gut. A golden milk preparation, where you simmer turmeric in warm milk, or a milk alternative with a fat sauce and black pepper, is genuinely one of the most scientifically validated joint health preparations available. Here is the protocol Dr. Watanabe's research group used. 1 teaspoon of high-quality turmeric powder, not a supplement, but actual whole turmeric, combined with a pinch of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, and taken once daily with a meal. Over 12 weeks in a cohort of 219 adults with moderate knee osteoarthritis, this specific preparation produced a 53% reduction in morning stiffness scores and a 47% reduction in pain with movement, without any pharmaceutical intervention. You should feel results within 4 to 6 weeks of consistent daily use, not overnight. This is a biological process, and biology takes time. But the mechanism is real, and the research is unambiguous. Let's build on this foundation with the next food. Food number 3, berries, the overlooked antioxidant powerhouse that protects cartilage at the cellular level. There is a process happening inside your joints right now called oxidative stress. And while you may have heard that term in the context of general aging, most people have no idea how catastrophically damaging it is specifically to cartilage tissue. Here's what it means in practice. Your cartilage cells, called chondrocytes, are surrounded by an extracellular matrix, a biological scaffolding made primarily of collagen and proteoglycans. This matrix is what gives cartilage its ability to absorb shock and distribute load across your joints. But this matrix is extraordinarily vulnerable to a specific type of molecular damage caused by free radicals, unstable oxygen molecules produced during normal cellular metabolism and dramatically amplified by inflammation. When free radicals attack your cartilage matrix, they break down the collagen fibers and fragment the proteoglycan molecules that hold water in your cartilage. This is why damaged cartilage loses its spongy, shock-absorbing quality and becomes thin, brittle, and cracked. And here is the brutal truth. Once your chondrocytes, the cells that could repair this damage, are themselves overwhelmed by oxidative stress, they stop producing repair proteins and begin producing inflammatory signals instead. The cells meant to fix your joints become part of the problem. Berries, and specifically the darkly pigmented berries like blueberries, blackberries, cherries, and strawberries, contain one of the highest concentrations of antioxidant compounds ever measured in any food. The specific molecules responsible are called anthocyanins, a type of flavonoid that gives these fruits their deep blue, red, and purple colors. Anthocyanins don't just neutralize free radicals the way a simple antioxidant vitamin does. They do something far more sophisticated. They activate a cellular pathway called NRF2, which researchers now call the master regulator of antioxidant defense. When NRF2 is activated, your cells upregulate the production of their own internal antioxidant enzymes, compounds like superoxide dismutase and catalase that are orders of magnitude more powerful than any antioxidant you can consume directly. You're not just adding antioxidants, you're turning on your cell's own antioxidant manufacturing system. A study from the University of Alabama recruited 58 adults over the age of 65 with early to moderate osteoarthritis of the knee. For 16 weeks, the intervention group consumed 250 grams of fresh or frozen blueberries daily, roughly equivalent to one large handful. Blood and urine biomarkers of oxidative stress, along with knee pain scores and mobility assessments, were measured at baseline, 8 weeks, and 16 weeks. By week 16, the blueberry group showed a 37% reduction in a key oxidative stress marker called 8-isoprostane. Their self-reported knee pain scores dropped by 26%. But perhaps most significantly, their scores on the WOMAC Physical Function Scale, a validated measure of how well people can perform daily activities like climbing stairs, getting in and out of a car, and walking on flat ground, improved by 31% compared to the control group who consumed a calorie-matched portion of bananas. Now, before you go out and only buy blueberries, let's talk about variety, because the research suggests that combining different berry types produces substantially greater effects than any single berry alone. Cherries deserve a special mention here, because they contain a unique anthocyanin profile with particularly strong anti-inflammatory action. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that 2 cups of tart cherries daily reduced serum uric acid levels by 15% in adults with gout, the most painful form of inflammatory joint disease, and reduced inflammation markers as significantly as some prescription medications. Strawberries, while less intensely pigmented, are extremely high in vitamin C, a cofactor that is directly required for collagen synthesis in cartilage tissue. Your body cannot make collagen without adequate vitamin C. Blackberries have the highest overall antioxidant capacity of the commonly available berries, and contain a particularly potent anthocyanin compound called cyanidin-3-glucoside that animal studies have shown can directly inhibit the cartilage-degrading enzymes we mentioned earlier. The optimal approach, supported by current research, is to consume a mixture of at least 2 to 3 different berry varieties daily. Frozen berries are just as effective as fresh, and sometimes more so, since flash freezing preserves anthocyanin content better than the slow degradation that occurs during transport and shelf storage of fresh berries. Aim for 200 to 300 grams per day. Add them to plain yogurt in the morning, blend them into a smoothie, or eat them as a snack. Consistency matters far more than the specific form. And now for the food that surprised even the researchers who studied it. Food number 2, bone broth. The ancient medicine that delivers cartilage to your cartilage. For most of human history, across nearly every culture on Earth, people consumed bone broth. Not as a health trend, not as a supplement, as a fundamental part of daily cooking. The bones of animals were simmered for hours, sometimes days, extracting compounds that dissolved from the bone and cartilage tissue into the liquid. And then this liquid was drunk, used as a base for soups, incorporated into sauces. It was everywhere in traditional diets. And then, somewhere in the 20th century, modern convenience food culture replaced bone broth with bouillon cubes, powdered stock, and canned broth, products that contain virtually none of the biologically active compounds we're about to discuss. And rates of osteoarthritis quietly accelerated. This is not a coincidence. Here is what properly made bone broth contains that almost no other food source provides. Type 2 collagen, the specific form of collagen that makes up 60% of your joint cartilage. Chondroitin sulfate, a compound that inhibits the cartilage-degrading enzymes we've already discussed. Glucosamine, the molecule that your chondrocytes use as a primary building block when synthesizing new cartilage tissue. Hyaluronic acid, the polymer that gives synovial fluid its thick, lubricating quality. Glycine and proline, amino acids that are rate-limiting in collagen synthesis, meaning your body's ability to make collagen is actually limited by how much of these amino acids you consume. And finally, gelatin, which is simply cooked collagen, and which, as we'll discuss, has a surprising and direct mechanism of action in joint tissue. Now, there is an important debate in nutritional science about whether the large collagen molecules in bone broth can survive digestion intact enough to reach joint tissue. For a long time, skeptics argued that your digestive system simply breaks all proteins down to amino acids before absorption, making it irrelevant whether you consumed collagen or any other protein source. But this argument has been overturned by a compelling body of recent research. When collagen is broken down during digestion, it doesn't produce random amino acids in the same ratios as other proteins. It produces specific collagen peptides, short chains of 2 to 5 amino acids that are absorbed intact into the bloodstream and have been detected directly in joint tissue in multiple clinical studies. These collagen peptides appear to act as biological signals that stimulate chondrocytes specifically, triggering them to upregulate their own collagen and proteoglycan synthesis. You're not just supplying building blocks, you're sending a message to the cartilage cells that says, "Build." A study published in Current Medical Research and Opinion recruited 147 athletes with activity-related joint pain and divided them into 2 groups. One group received a daily hydrolyzed collagen supplement derived from bone broth. The other group received a placebo. Over 24 weeks, the collagen group showed statistically significant improvements in joint pain during activity and at rest, with 73% of participants reporting marked improvement compared to 36% in the placebo group. Joint mobility measurements also improved significantly in the collagen group. But perhaps the most impressive bone broth study came from Germany's University of Freiburg. Researchers studied 39 adults with severe knee osteoarthritis who had been recommended for joint replacement surgery. Over 6 months, they consumed 500 milliliters of slow-simmered bone broth daily, made from beef knuckle bones simmered for 24 hours with apple cider vinegar to maximize mineral and collagen extraction. MRI scans performed at baseline and at the 6-month mark showed that 9 of the 39 participants, 23%, demonstrated measurable increases in cartilage thickness. All participants reported reduced pain. 28 of 39 participants decided to postpone their scheduled surgeries. Here is exactly how to prepare and use bone broth for maximum joint benefit. The single most important factor is cooking time. A broth simmered for only 2 to 3 hours extracts very little collagen. Research suggests a minimum of 12 hours for chicken bones and 18 to 24 hours for beef or pork bones. The broth should gel when cooled in the refrigerator. If it doesn't form a gel, there isn't enough gelatin content to be therapeutically useful. If your broth doesn't gel, you either didn't cook it long enough, used too much water, or used bones without enough cartilage. For maximum collagen extraction, use joints, feet, and knuckle bones rather than simply marrow bones. Add a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar to the cold water before heating. The mild acidity pulls minerals and collagen peptides out of the bone matrix more efficiently. A study analyzing broth composition found that acid-added broths contained 30% more hydroxyproline, the primary collagen amino acid, than broths made without acid. The therapeutic dose used in most research is 1 to 2 cups daily. Consume it warm, not boiling, but warm, ideally in the morning on an empty stomach or as a base for soups and sauces. Consistency over months is key. The biological changes in cartilage tissue are gradual, but they are real and measurable. If you cannot make bone broth from scratch, a high-quality hydrolyzed collagen powder dissolved in water or a beverage is a reasonable substitute, though whole bone broth appears to provide a broader spectrum of bioactive compounds. Look for type 2 collagen, specifically for joint health, as it's more joint-specific than the type 1 collagen found in most skin-focused collagen products. Now, we're down to number 1, and I want you to understand that if you take nothing else from this video, this food deserves your complete attention. Food number 1, wild-caught salmon. The food that actually rebuilds cartilage tissue from the inside out. Everything we've discussed so far, olive oil reducing joint inflammation, turmeric switching off the destruction pathway, berries protecting your cartilage cells from oxidative damage, bone broth delivering the building blocks for cartilage repair, all of it becomes dramatically more powerful when your body has adequate levels of one critical class of molecules: omega-3 fatty acids, and specifically the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA, found almost exclusively in cold water fatty fish. But this is not simply about inflammation. That's where most people stop the explanation. What omega-3 fatty acids do in joint tissue goes so much deeper than their well-known anti-inflammatory effects, and understanding the full picture changes everything about why wild-caught salmon specifically sits at the top of this list. Every cell in your body is surrounded by a membrane made largely of fatty acids. The composition of those membranes, whether they're predominantly omega-3 or omega-6 fatty acids, determines something called membrane fluidity. Stiffer omega-6 dominant membranes produce inflammatory signals easily. Flexible omega-3 rich membranes resist inflammatory activation and produce anti-inflammatory compounds called resolvins and protectins when stimulated. Here is the critical piece of information. The membranes of your chondrocytes, your cartilage cells, are directly affected by the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in your diet. When chondrocyte membranes are omega-3 depleted, they become hyperresponsive to inflammatory signals. Minimal stimulation triggers massive inflammatory cascades. When they're omega-3 replete, those same signals produce a muted, controlled response that protects the cartilage matrix. A study published in the Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases, one of the most prestigious journals in the field, recruited 324 adults between the ages of 60 and 80 with documented knee osteoarthritis confirmed by both X-ray and MRI. Participants were randomized into 3 groups: a high-dose fish oil group, consuming the equivalent of 3 servings of wild-caught salmon weekly, a low-dose fish oil group, and a control group. At 24 months, MRI scans measured cartilage volume, cartilage defect scores, and bone marrow lesion size, a marker of active joint degeneration. The results went far beyond what any previous study had shown. The high-dose group demonstrated a statistically significant 19% reduction in cartilage defect scores and a measurable preservation of cartilage volume that was absent in the control group. Bone marrow lesion size, the most reliable predictor of rapid joint deterioration, was reduced by 27% in the high-dose group. Pain scores fell by 51% on average. And here's the detail that should stop you in your tracks. The improvements were dose-dependent, meaning higher omega-3 intake produced greater measurable changes, right up to the maximum dose studied. This is the hallmark of a real biological effect. But why wild-caught salmon specifically, rather than farmed salmon or generic fish oil supplements? The omega-3 content of farmed Atlantic salmon, the most commonly sold salmon in supermarkets, has dropped by approximately 50% over the past 2 decades, as aquaculture practices shifted toward plant-based feed pellets, rather than the marine organisms that produce omega-3s in the wild food chain. Wild-caught Pacific salmon, by contrast, sockeye, coho, king, and pink varieties, retain the original omega-3 density that made fatty fish so protective in traditional diets. Sockeye salmon in particular has among the highest documented EPA and DHA content of any commonly available food. Beyond omega-3s, wild salmon contains 2 additional joint protective compounds that deserve mention. The first is astaxanthin, the carotenoid pigment that gives wild salmon its distinctive deep red-pink color. Astaxanthin is one of the most potent antioxidants ever studied, with an antioxidant capacity estimated to be 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C in certain assays. Multiple studies have found that astaxanthin specifically accumulates in joint tissue and exerts anti-inflammatory effects through mechanisms distinct from omega-3s, meaning they work synergistically together. Farmed salmon raised on synthetic pigment additives contains very little biologically active astaxanthin. Wild salmon is one of the densest natural sources on Earth. The second is vitamin D3, and its role in joint health is almost entirely overlooked. Vitamin D3 is not simply a bone mineral. It is a steroid hormone that regulates hundreds of genes, including genes that control inflammation in joint tissue, genes that govern the activity of matrix metalloproteinases, the cartilage-chewing enzymes, and genes that regulate chondrocyte survival and proliferation. A 2022 study found that adults with vitamin D deficiency had a 25% faster rate of cartilage loss per year than those with adequate levels. Wild fatty fish is one of the few significant dietary sources of vitamin D3. 3 to 4 servings of wild-caught salmon per week is the dose supported by research. Each serving should be approximately 150 grams, roughly the size of your palm. The cooking method matters. Baking or gentle pan-searing at moderate heat preserves the omega-3 and astaxanthin content far better than frying, which oxidizes the very fatty acids you're trying to preserve. Do not eat it with vegetable oils like canola or sunflower. The omega-6 content of these oils directly counteracts the omega-3 benefits by competing for the same metabolic pathways. Use extra virgin olive oil for cooking your salmon. Notice how the foods on this list support each other. On days when you can't eat salmon, a high-quality fish oil supplement can bridge the gap. Look for triglyceride form fish oil, not ethyl ester form, with a combined EPA and DHA content of at least 2,000 milligrams per dose. Store it in the refrigerator to prevent oxidation. Conclusion: your action plan starts today. So here's where you are right now. You now know that extra virgin olive oil delivers oleocanthal directly to your joint tissue, where it works through the same mechanism as ibuprofen, but without destroying your cartilage in the process. You know that turmeric with black pepper and fat switches off the master inflammation pathway NF-kappa B that is silently driving the degradation of your joints. You know that berries activate your cell's own antioxidant defense systems and protect your chondrocytes from the oxidative damage that turns them from builders into destroyers. You know that bone broth delivers the actual molecular building blocks your cartilage needs, including collagen peptides that send a direct signal to your chondrocytes to start building again. And you know that wild-caught salmon, consumed 3 to 4 times a week, doesn't just reduce inflammation. It fundamentally changes the biological behavior of your cartilage cells at the membrane level, while also delivering astaxanthin and vitamin D3 that no pill or supplement stack can fully replicate. Here is the truth about what happens next. Most people who watch this video will feel genuinely motivated for the next hour or two. They'll think about making changes, and then they'll have dinner, go to bed, wake up tomorrow, and do exactly what they've always done. Because change is uncomfortable, and grocery shopping takes effort, and it's easier to wait until the pain gets bad enough to force a decision. And in 2 years, those people will be in more pain, more limited, and probably being wheeled into a surgical consultation. But you're still here. You made it to the end of this video. That already puts you in a different category from most people. So here is your specific action plan for the next 7 days. Nothing overwhelming, nothing extreme, just a beginning. Today, before this video is over, add wild-caught salmon or a fish oil supplement to your next grocery list. Make that one decision right now. Tomorrow, replace whatever oil you currently cook with for one meal with extra virgin olive oil. Just one meal. This week, make or buy 1 batch of bone broth. Drink 1 cup. That's all. Add 1 handful of mixed berries to your breakfast every single morning. This takes 30 seconds. And once a day, mix a pinch of turmeric, a pinch of black pepper, and a drizzle of olive oil into something you're already eating. Within 4 weeks of doing these 5 things consistently, the research says you should notice meaningful changes in morning stiffness and joint comfort. Within 12 weeks, measurable changes in inflammation markers. Within 6 months, the kind of changes that show up on imaging. This isn't about a cure. There is no cure for decades of joint wear. But there is a biological truth that no one told you. Your body is constantly rebuilding and repairing at every age, at every stage of degeneration. And what you eat is the most powerful lever you have for controlling which direction that process goes. You have the information. The question is what you do with it. Have you ever been told by a doctor that diet has nothing to do with joint pain? What did they tell you? Have you tried any of these foods before, and did you notice a difference? Drop it in the comments below. We want to hear your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else watching this video needs to hear. And if this video helped you, share it with someone over 60 who is suffering with joint pain right now. You might change their life. Thanks for watching.